This is what the Breath of the Wild model looks like with the default blender shading turned off, in case you were curious. Welcome to How Many Tries, a content free time show where we look at 3D models in video games. Today we're going to be looking at Link, the hero of Hyrule. We're of course starting with Ocarina of Time Link from the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, released in 1998. The last mainline Link we got before Ocarina of Time was this guy from Link to the Past. So just comparing the 2D sprite from that game to the 3D model from Ocarina of Time, obviously a huge difference, doesn't even look like the same character. But when you compare it to the concept art from Link to the Past, he actually doesn't look all that different. They got rid of the yellow brim around his hat, they made his hair a little shorter. He now has these like white-gray underclothes, but he's still got the green tunic, the belt, the long pointy hat, the blue eyes. They did give him earrings in Ocarina of Time. They did do a pretty good job of matching the Ocarina of Time concept art. Although I didn't realize until recording this video, he didn't actually have that strap going across his chest in Ocarina of Time. There's nothing really holding his sword there, it just kind of sticks to his back. Overall, I think this is a really good model. 735 triangles. If I had to be nitpicky about it, I think maybe the one complaint I have is that this texture on the bottom of his tunic here looks kind of... is sloppy the right word? It looks like someone just took the brush tool and went, eh. I love this design for Link though. I really like the whole 90s anime aesthetic he had going on here. The Master Sword's super cool in Ocarina of Time too. And just as an FYI, we're going to be skipping the young Link models today because there are a lot more 3D models of Link than I realized. Next up is his model from Super Smash Bros., released just a few months later in 1999. A little lower triangle count this time around, just 476 tries. They did a pretty good job of making this model look almost just as good though. The textures aren't quite as complex. You can see he doesn't have the straps on his boots anymore. There's no belt buckle. There's even less detail on his tunic this time around. The biggest problem with this one is he doesn't have any hands. He's just got these big lumps on the end of his arms. It looks like a Final Fantasy VII character. The sword still looks just as good. You gotta love that shield. Next we have Link from Super Smash Bros. Melee, released 2 years later in 2001. Huge upgrade here. Over 5,300 tries this time. This model looks so good. Everything about it is just so on point. His tunic looks super good this time around, even if they did just model one side and mirror it. He finally has this strap on his torso so that his sword and shield are actually attached to something. He looks super vibrant and colorful. And the detail, man, look at that sword. For me, this is probably peak Link. Twilight Princess, released 5 years later in 2006. This was sort of the antithesis to The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. A lot of people thought that game was too colorful and little kid oriented. They wanted to see something more similar to the Space World 2000 tech demo. This model is just so brown and gloomy, no matter what shaders you're looking at him with. It does have some really nice details though. His clothes textures are a lot more detailed. These belt straps look a lot more detailed. He just overall looks a lot more Renaissance-y, I would say. Not my favorite Link, but still very serviceable for what they were going for. Next we got Super Smash Brothers Brawl, released 2 years later in 2008. I guess they realized they went a little too dark with Twilight Princess. They did lighten this Brawl model up just ever so slightly. Maybe not shading wise, but coloring wise, you can tell this is a little more yellowy green. The hair is definitely a lot lighter. I think I like this model maybe just slightly more than the Twilight Princess one. I kind of like these details around his chest area here. His tunic sort of looks like it fits maybe a little better. Skyward Sword, released 3 years later in 2011. Perhaps the most divisive of the Zelda games. I wasn't a big fan of the game itself, but I gotta say, this is a very solid Link. I don't know if I like his pants being a different color than his undershirt now, and the tunic sort of lost a lot of its texture. It looks kind of like Play-Doh now, but I do like the coloring on this one. It's pretty vibrant. There's a lot of contrast. It's not as dark and dreary as those last two models. This Link is cool and edgy, but this one just kind of looks like he could maybe be your friend. 4,300 tries. I almost forgot Hyrule Warriors Link. This is the model from Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, released in 2018. Super good model. I'm not sure why they gave him the blue scarf, but if it weren't for that, I feel like I might call this one the definitive Link model. It's just so good. 18,749 tries. Man, just look at those textures. Breath of the Wild released another 6 years later in 2017. This model is a lot more complicated because the clothes are layered on top of the body, so forgive me if there's some weird clipping issues going on here. So this is what it's supposed to look like on the right here. You can really tell how much work the in-game lighting is doing when you compare these two models. Funny enough, when you compare the three of them, the Skyward Sword model, the Breath of the Wild Blender model, and the Breath of the Wild in-game model, the Breath of the Wild model looks surprisingly similar to the Skyward Sword one. His hair is maybe a little more detailed in Breath of the Wild. I guess we should probably compare apples to apples, huh? This is the in-game Skyward Sword on the left here. Both of these are really solid models. I think I do prefer the art style of Breath of the Wild just a little bit more. I think the cel-shaded look of Breath of the Wild looks really clean. It almost makes it look like a hand-drawn animation, you know? With some of the shadows going on here, it looks really good. The shading in Skyward Sword was a lot smoother, not quite as stylish in my opinion. This is what the Breath of the Wild model looks like with the default blender shading turned off, in case you were curious. The Super Smash Bros. Ultimate model for Link is so complex, it crashed Blender. 34,400 tries. I think that's because of all this equipment he has. Look at this guy. He's got the sword, the shield, his arrows, and his quiver. Like 4 different belts, the Sheikah slate, and he's showing a little bit of leg. Look at Link rocking the short shorts. This isn't my favorite Link, but I do like how he incorporates parts of pretty much every Link that came before him. He's got some of that dark realism to him from Twilight Princess, particularly up in his hair here. But he also has like the classic Master Sword, shield, and boots from Ocarina of Time. And then he's got some stuff from classic Link from the original Legend of Zelda games, like the short underclothing, the bright lime green, this classic little twine at the top of his tunic here. I feel like they did a really good job of celebrating Link's history with this model. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to include this in the adult Link video or the young Link one, but here's his model from the Link's Awakening remake, released a year after Smash Bros. Ultimate in 2019. That's a chibi version of Link, alright. Looks pretty good. Can't complain. Definitely looks like he's made out of clay or something. He's so rounded. And last but not least, we've got Tears of the Kingdom Link, released in 2023. I'm not even gonna bother with the clothes on this one. I mean, who's to say what outfit he should wear, really? Looks pretty good, I guess. Where are his nipples? He looks very feminine in this game. I mean, look at that figure. Even more so than in his previous games. Over 26,000 tries, even with his clothes off. So who's today's winner? I have to give it to Super Smash Bros. Melee Link. I just really love that design. I'd really like to see this model updated to today's graphics. But what do you guys think? What's your favorite Link? Let me know in the comments. Let me know who you want to see one of these videos on next. If you want to chat with me about video games, feel free to join the Limited Lives Discord, link in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching.